Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to the 25th GeoGearHeads show. I'm the bad cop.
And I'm Daryl W4, and we'll be talking about several different things for this, our second Randomize episode.
Next week, we're going to talk about the devices that we use when we're out caching, and a little how we use those. If you're willing to share which devices you're using, and what you'd like to know, and what you don't know about them, we'd love to include some of those on the show. Just call our voicemail line at area code 206-350-3647 or email geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com.
Of course, we're also on Google+, Facebook, and Twitter, and you can contact us through any of those services. We're still looking for feedback on the Hangout On Air videos and your ideal length for a GeoGearHeads episode. You can also contact us about any of the topics we've covered and ones you'd like us to cover.
So, since this is a randomized episode, we get to talk about the little bits and pieces of news that don't quite fill up a full episode and that we still think is interesting. One of those we'd like to talk about are the new Apple Maps and how they've moved away from Google.
Well, and the new Google Maps as well. And we did mention a little bit last week about the new Apple Maps on iOS, and unfortunately we haven't really gotten a whole lot of information about those. We have gotten a lot of information about the new Google Maps, and a lot of people are very excited about those, mostly for one feature in particular, which is you're now able to cache those map tiles at any zoom levels that you want, and I believe they said it was for up to 30 days. So using their app, you can actually now go offline. And we've been talking on and off about the problems that you have with maps on most devices, most of the smartphones, where if you're not connected, they don't work. Right. So this is one of those things you can go in, cache the maps, take it offline, and actually use it. So I'm very intrigued and interested to see where this is going to go, because I can see some new Android-based personal navigation devices coming where you just stick it in your car. When you pull into the garage, it syncs up your tiles and refreshes them and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's something interesting that might be happening there. But for cachers, now you have a good, and this is right now I think just primarily on Android, because that's where most of the Google Maps for navigation is coming, because iOS, it's been lousy. But on Android, you're now going to be able to use that for driving directions offline with a standard tablet, or turn off your cellular modem or whatever, and cut down on that data usage and cut down on a lot of the problems that we've been seeing with trying to do those maps in the cloud.
Yes, but it will take a little more work to have those maps downloaded or cached to your device. But, you know, that's a payoff I'm willing to make.
Yeah, and we've been talking on and off about, just last week we talked about the Navigon app that we like. And this is going to be now something that really kind of does hurt Navigon and TomTom, because you can get free with your device a routable, offline capable navigation system. Now, I'm sure that Google is not going to be quite as good, at least not at first, as like Navigon, TomTom, and Garmin are. Well, and technically Navigon is Garmin now.
Right.
But they're not going to be doing quite as good a job. So I think there's still going to be a need for those third-party apps. And TomTom and Apple are working together on the maps. So we're certainly not going to see the likes of TomTom go away. But no, I do kind of wonder where that's going to go.
Well, you look at the other apps that are bundled, shall we say, with the Apple iOS, and there's still a dozen or even hundreds of cameras and note-taking apps that are still out there. So it doesn't mean that Apple's going to corner the market in navigation by any stretch of the imagination.
Nor is Google. But what it does do on Google's side, on Android, you're finding that there aren't very many good offline map navigation type tools. Everyone that I've talked with who's used any of the apps on the Android side that are the offline like Navigon really complain that they're nowhere near as good as the official Google Maps app. And the only problem being that the official Google Maps app needs to be connected all the time.
Right.
So there's a big big difference between the quality of the navigation on Android and on iOS, and I think in part that's because iOS wasn't allowed to use the Google Maps for navigation. That was part of the license agreement. Was you can't use those maps for navigation. You had to bring your own maps if you wanted to do navigation. So you saw a lot more development there because Apple wasn't able to do it in their device as a default. So now if you wanted to do that, you had to go look for that app, and that made a market for it where otherwise, if it's free, most people are just going to deal with it because, it's free.
It's free. Right. And now you brought up the difference between Google and Apple Maps. That's going to be far more, what do I want to say? It's going to be seen so much easier when iOS 6 ships. But you look at the Apple Maps, and they're so, I want to say simplified compared to the Google Maps.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I keep seeing is the people who have had their hands on it and have been willing to talk about it, because I believe it's actually still under NDA technically, but they have released some screenshots so they can kind of talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a look at the Google Maps versus the Apple Maps side by side, the Apple Maps are really, really simple. They don't have the clutter. They don't have a lot of the information that you'll get out of the Google Maps. And a lot of people have been really saying, it looks like it's worse, but when I actually started to play with it and use it, it's better because I don't have text in the way of seeing this turn in the street or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I have to agree, there's less clutter. I don't care so much about the businesses that are labeled on the Google map. I just want to see the street and where it's going. So, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. There's not a whole lot to say, especially since it's still in beta at this point.
Absolutely, and I hope that Google's going to have some options now that they're doing this major revamp to actually turn off the labels at certain zoom levels, kind of like the Nuvies and the TomToms have been able to do, where you set at this level, you see this level of detail. So I'm hoping that we're going to start seeing some of that from Google, because right now that's just all automated and it's whatever it decides to do for you. And that's where a lot of people have been complaining that it's not as easy to see stuff, because you do get those businesses and you do get the parks. All you really need to see in most cases is that there is a park there, and that's going to give you enough of an indication. You don't necessarily need to know the name of the park. And how many times have you actually looked at a map to find that the park name is wrong? It's something from 2-3 years ago before they renamed it, or there's one that's not too far from me where it used to be a religious amusement park. That was like 10-15 years ago.
Okay.
It's now like a driving range, and there's like I want to say a doctor's office that was built on that land, but it's still marked on Google Maps as being this religious theme park.
Interesting. Now, one other thing I want to talk on, people are saying that these new Apple Maps are going to be the end of in-car navigation. And I don't believe that's the case. First of all, now you could take any smartphone, any tablet, be it iOS, be it Android, and have that turn-by-turn navigation that we used to rely on with a Nuvi or a TomTom. One thing I looked at here is that the automotive navigation market accounts for half of Garmin's revenue. So if that's a big hit, that could hurt Garmin.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why Garmin did actually go out and buy Navigon, is because they did see that move from the dedicated devices to the smartphones. So I think that is definitely going to be an issue. I don't think that the Apple or the Google Maps are going to be the end to the in-car dedicated navigation units. However, it's the next step toward eliminating those dedicated units. And we are seeing more electronics in the car, And even the electronics that they're putting in the car, they've started to move away from trying to do as much and are depending more and more on the smartphone. You know, you're going to replace your phone every 2, sometimes more, maybe sometimes less, but we'll say every 2, 3 years. Your car, you're going to probably keep it for 5 years, maybe
Right.
10 years. You know, if you're on a lease, maybe it's only 3 years, but you're still, in most cases, going to be replacing that phone much quicker, and it's always going to be easier to get the updates to the phone than it is to your car.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about, you know, what happens if your phone crashes. You're not going to run into a tree if your phone crashes. If you know, your car runs into some software problems, you can run into some serious issues.
Right.
So it is a lot safer and easier for them to just rely on jobbing out that part of the technology to something that's a smartphone that you're already going to invest in anyway. You're always going to carry with you. So it really does make sense to kind of go that route. It is kind of annoying, though, in that it's so much nicer to just get into a car and have it work and know where things are rather than have to pair your device with the car and find the apps that are compatible and all that kind of nonsense.
Well, I have to say the numbers that you threw out for phones and cars, as far as long as people keep them, are way off for me. My cars I tend to keep for about 10 years, and I'm working on 3 years on my phone already, so with no replacement in sight. So there are some people, you know, okay, cheap,
Oh, yeah.
that will hang on to those things forever.
Yeah, but
Now,
still, you're not going to have your phone for 10 years. I can guarantee the phone is going to be replaced
yeah,
before
okay,
then.
you're right, not 10 years. 9.5 is what I'll push for then.
Okay.
Now, 20% of Garmin's bottom line is generated by automotive navigation. That means selling those maps to manufacturers so they can put them in the cars. And, you know, you're right. There is something about having a built-in GPS into your car. It may not be the best, but it's always there.
Well,
you don't
one
have
of
to,
the
oh,
interesting
I
thing-
forgot to grab the GPS, and now I need to figure
Right.
out where I'm going.
Well, one of the interesting things that we were seeing about 5-10 years ago was rather than build their own nav systems, the automotive guys started going out and just buying specially built versions of a Nuvi or a TomTom that went in.
Mm-hmm.
And it had special connectors. It was really kind of cool, some of the stuff that they were doing. In some of the cars, you'd have this mount on the dashboard where you'd slide in. It was just like a little docking port, not like a full docking station that you're normally going to see, but you slid in the stand into that docking station, and it had your power connectors and everything right in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was incorporated, but it was still a separate unit that you could actually take out and upgrade at home, do all your map changes that way, and they don't have to develop this unit specifically for that car. It's now something that can be spread out across multiple vehicles. You're using the same software in that as you are in this other version, and that's been one of the big things is you're paying $1,000 for a nav system on a new car when you can go out and spend $200-300 to get a good nav system that's standalone
and easily updatable.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it is a trend that they've been pulling that stuff out of the cars because it isn't efficient. It's more costly. It doesn't have any benefit aside from the fact that it's nicely integrated. So I think that the days of the in-car nav are definitely, the built-in in-car nav are definitely numbered, and I think we're going to see that disappear. What we are seeing is a little bit more interesting where they'll have the screens and things that tie in with your smartphones, with your PDAs, whatever, and you'll do your updates and stuff, bringing it in, and they will still store some of the information there in the car, but you're still using the phone, you're still using the PDA, that kind of thing. Yeah, one of the manufacturers even had something tied to, I think it was Google Maps, where you could actually send to car from Google Maps.
Right.
And it would actually send the instructions, but there wasn't the information on board. The vehicle didn't have the full nav system, and again, they're just trying to strip some of that out. Why bother? You've got better ways to do it. Yeah, it's kind of a nuisance if you're doing it that way because you don't have the option to just pick en route if you don't have your smartphone with you. You know, hey,
Right.
I'm wanting to stop at this gas station, you know, and fill up. It doesn't have that. So, well, and that's one of the other things too, is these in-car systems don't have the option of polling like Gas Buddy, for instance, to find the lowest gas prices nearby. And we're seeing that on TomTom. We're seeing that on Waze. You know, so many of these devices now are going out getting current gas prices, and you can say, hey, I need to pick up gas. What's the closest, cheapest station en route? And it can do that for you. That's not something that you can really do with a car.
We're starting to see that, though, in the Microsoft Sync, and Chevy is using something associated with Bing. I don't remember the name of the specific head unit, but that allows it to go out over the internet and grab information for you.
But again, those are tied with your phone, not direct to the, you know, like OnStar had their own network.
No, a lot of these have basically a SIM stuck somewhere in the car. They'll give it to you for a year or 2 years, however you work out the deal. Then you've got to pay month to month after that.
Yeah, I've actually got the sync system, and what that does is it actually is a phone call. So it actually dials your phone via the Bluetooth, and it's an 800 number that it just connects to. You talk with it, and that's how it does its voice nav for that as well. And that one really is disappointing. The newer version hopefully is going to be a little bit better, you know, but the version I have really stinks. And the Chevy one is supposed to be better, but I haven't had the chance to use it. And the Chevy is using OnStar, which is their own network. So you've got that one that uses its own network, but the Sync is actually just using a standard old dial-up, and it's actually running in like a modem mode to send the information back to the car.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cool thing about the sync method is if you're using your smartphone as your nav unit and you don't want to have to use that, you know, because you don't have the mount or whatever, you can just bring up the instructions and have it talk to you through your stereo as you're going along. And it is easy and nice, and you don't have anything mounted on your dashboard that's extra. If you get into the, I forget what they call it now, I think it's My Ford Touch, that one gets a lot more involved with, you know, actually having like good visuals on screen. So that's a better option if that's really what you want to look for. But I haven't had a chance to use it, and it's not been received very well, and a lot of complaints have been posted to all kinds of agencies about the My Ford Touch. But once you get to use it, I've heard it is a very nice system.
Well, let's take that opportunity to segue into more Microsoft products. Microsoft just this week announced Microsoft Surface RT, which would be a tablet, and Microsoft Surface Pro. Now, the RT is a tablet, so very similar with the iPad, all the other Android tablets, but it's going to run Windows 8.
Well, both of these actually run Windows 8. The difference is that the RT is the ARM version of that tablet and only runs the Metro apps, and the Pro is actually, I want to say it's an Ivy Bridge. I don't have it up in front of me, but it's an Ivy Bridge Intel processor running full Windows 8 Pro. So that one is going to have the option of running all of your Windows apps in theory, so that you could actually use it as a iPad-type tablet running all of your Windows software. And that's what I think is kind of appealing about that particular product.
Right. As these get a little farther along in development, we'll see what they have as far as navigation, GPS chip built in, what have you, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all those other options.
Yeah, I was really interested in the announcement that they didn't give any pricing. They just said they'll be competitively priced with comparable tablets for the RT and with Ultrabooks for the Pro. So you're probably looking at somewhere around the $500–600 range for the base Surface RT
tablet.
Yeah, and for the Surface Pro, you're probably looking at about $1,000.
Ultrabooks tend to be a little less than that, but maybe $800–900. Still,
well,
it's about $1,000.
The thing is, they're saying it's competitive, so not comparable, but competitive. So they might consider these to be competitive at a little bit of higher price, and that's kind of what I'm worried about with the tablets. But they've also not given a date, just that it's going to be available with Windows 8's release.
Right. So that would give you the option to take GSAC with you on the road.
And a lot of people love to do that, especially if this does have the built-in GPS. I could see this turning into a very cool caching product.
Exactly. I know a lot of people on cache machines where they go for, 100 or more caches in a day. They have a laptop mounted right in the car with them, and they're able to update everything on GSAC as they're caching. So this could be a very nice replacement for that.
Definitely, and that's where I really see this being interesting. It's not that RT, because the RT is limited to the Metro apps, which aren't as
so the Metro apps
available.
Meaning the phone type apps.
Yeah, it's the tablet designed apps.
Right.
It's not the standard architecture. It's using, as programming goes, it's using the more simplistic, call it languages, for lack of a better description. But basically, it's interpreted languages. It's not the low-level stuff that you can do with the full Windows, because the Metro apps are going to be cross-compiled and run on ARM and on Intel. So you can do both of these devices with the apps. And that's the cool thing, too, is that any Metro app will run on any Windows 8 machine. It's only the old-fashioned Windows apps that aren't going to run on the RT devices, which in this case is the Surface RT.
Right. So we'll see how that fills out as time goes along. We'll keep you up to date on that. Now, you mentioned some new batteries that you've come across.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we are seeing some newer, cheaper batteries starting to hit the market. And we've talked about so many batteries in earlier episodes, and it's amazing that in less than 6 months we're really starting to see some newer, less expensive options. And I just saw one just immediately before recording today that really was intriguing, in that it's a 10,000 milliamp hour battery for only $50. So
That's
for less
huge.
than half of what we're seeing from the guys like Mophie, who tend to be a little bit more expensive anyway, you're getting almost double the capacity. But the catch is, in order to give you that value, they've had to drop the output from 2 amps or 2.1 or 2.2, whatever those better batteries do that will drive your iPad. They've had to actually drop it to only an amp. So it will charge your smartphones, but it won't charge things like the iPad. And I kind of worry about those, because if it doesn't have that amperage for driving an iPad, there are some of the new smartphones coming out that really want a lot of power to charge up. And
yes, they do.
The good ones will take that extra power and actually charge up a little faster too. So it's nice having that extra push behind it. So you really probably do want to find one that's going to have the support for the iPad. But it's also nice to know that for $50 you can get something that's going to do, what would that be, about 4 full charges on an iPhone 4S?
Yeah, 4 or 5, yeah, exactly.
So that's something you can take with you, and it's cheap enough you don't have to worry about it so much. If you accidentally left it in the hotel room, you'd certainly want it back, but if it disappeared, it's not the $100 or $200 that you're spending to get a comparable battery from someone like Mophie.
Right. And, a week of camping, that would cover you.
Oh, absolutely. And there are other options out there, like the Energizer 18,000 that will even do more than that and drive a laptop as well. But those are a couple $100, as I recall.
Yes,
so this
they are.
is something that's it's a little bit smaller, not as tough to stick in a backpack. It's going to last you, a week of usage if you're not using your phone all that much. If you're using it heavily, maybe it's only a day of usage. But it's something, it's cheap enough too. You could put it in the back of your bike. We were talking about that.
Yes.
Put it in the trunk, and you can run the power cable and drive your power for your cycle computer kind of thing. Another cheap option for that. So I am very excited to see some of these cheaper options coming out. You just have to kind of worry, though, if it's going to be compatible in the future, and I still worry a lot about the quality of some of these cheaper batteries I've seen. Yeah, I've run into a number of bad batteries. How much have you run into batteries that just don't hold up over time?
Some double A's that I've purchased don't hold up over time. In fact, I've got some, that came with a product, and they're just, as generic as can be. And they were great for the first several uses, not much after that. I've purchased rechargeable battery packs, USB output through Monoprice, and those have been fabulous for me.
Well, and Monoprice is one of those companies that really does do a good job, and you can trust. They're not the same design quality or build quality as like a Mophie would be, but you're also talking about something that's usually a quarter of the price.
Exactly.
So that's a company that you can really kind of trust that they're going to do some good stuff. There's also Richard Solo, who makes some really good quality stuff that's not terribly expensive. We've mentioned the Energizer and the Power Skin on some of the other shows. One of my favorites is still the Hyper Shop. I can't remember the name of it offhand because they've changed their name a couple of times after being sued by Apple. But they have some good, high-quality stuff that's compact, very durable. And we have so many of these different batteries out there. Unless you can really find someone who's used them, it is kind of hard to tell how well they work. And I always worry about some of these newer batteries from the newer manufacturers that I just don't trust them, because I have had problems with cheap batteries, especially for like cameras and camcorders. I had this really awful battery that I got for one of my Sony cameras that just it was terrible. I can't even describe how bad this thing was. And there was the situation where some of these batteries were exploding in Europe and in China, I think is one of them. But basically in Asia and Europe, where it was a little bit easier to get a hold of some of these knockoff batteries,
right,
they had a lot of trouble with these things in the late part of the last decade and early part of this decade.
Yeah, I had forgotten about some of the bad camcorder batteries. I had one that I was convinced had a short inside it. I mean, the thing would just get so hot running, not to mention charging.
Oh yeah, and that's when you have to worry about the explosive decompression kind of situations.
I was just simply worried, about a fire hazard for it. I simply got rid of it. It was expensive, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to get rid of a battery than to watch your house burn down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget there was that situation during the I think it was the last election, where one of the journalists on the plane had his battery burst into flames in flight. So they had to make an emergency landing because this battery in the luggage rack had, caught on fire.
I had heard stories of a laptop causing a car fire. A laptop had been left on, sat in the floorboard, and the battery got so hot that it ignited the carpet. But I always took that as an urban myth.
Yeah, I can't say that I've heard that from any official source, but I do know that they've had problems with the batteries, particularly the ones from Sony. I want to say it was around 2006, had a major recall, and they actually banned those batteries from flights because of it, because they actually had those burst into flames. And there is something particular to flight because of that pressure change. That the batteries are more susceptible to issues in flight. And one of the things that they always tell you, if you ever read any of the fine print on any of the lithium-ion or lithium polymer batteries, is to not charge the battery while you're in flight. So if you get the flight chargers, most of those actually will tell the laptops not to charge while you're doing the flight. And one of the other things that they'll tell you is if you are plugged in and you do have a removable battery, it's generally best to pop that battery out just to be safe.
Exactly. Can never be too safe.
Absolutely. Kind of on the same power issue, we had talked on some of the other shows about a device coming out that actually used kinetic energy to charge your cell phones. And I want to say it was like the personal energy generator or something to that effect. And the PEG is actually coming out. They do have a pre-order page up now. I just got an email about that. For about $100, you can get a long tube that you just attach to like your backpack. If you're biking, they suggest strapping it to your leg, which I think would be very obnoxious. But it will generate power. But they do warn you, it's not going to be a whole lot of power. Yeah, this is one of those kind of things that I think you're probably better off to think of as, I'm going to generate some power for fun while I'm wasting the energy otherwise. So if you want to get into one of these kind of things and see what it's like, and if you are backpacking, it could be interesting because it is a rechargeable battery. It does generate power and helps recharge that battery on the fly. So if you're going to be backpacking, you can strap the thing onto your pack, just kind of go out there and, you know, generate a little bit of extra power and help recharge your phone while you're at it.
Definitely. I mean, and you know, you're using a lot of them to, or you're using a lot of power in your phone if you're tracking your walk or whatever using the GPS. Another one that I'm interested in is the T-Pod, T-P-O-D. It's actually the T-Pod 1. It's thermoelectric power on demand. This one's using a T-candle, so just a little bitty candle, and the motion of the heat using that convection motion will actually produce enough electricity to charge a cell phone.
Yeah, that's another really interesting one, and there's actually another similar one that's come out, which is actually a camp stove that will generate electricity. And I've talked with a few people who had pre-ordered one, and one person actually said that they got it already, but hasn't had a chance to really use it. So we don't know a whole lot about how those work, but the problem with almost any of these is they don't generate that much power.
Well, the T-Pod actually does a decent job. Now, I'm looking at the Kickstarter page for it right now. 12 hours to go as we're recording here, and they've got all the money they needed from the pledges. So it looks like that's going to be a reality.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that one was they really wanted to do something for the developing world, and that's really where they were targeting that one. So they're looking to build it initially for those of us in the first world who can afford to buy it and help pay for the development, but their ultimate goal is to bring this thing down in cost that they can, you know, give them to the third world in an efficient, cheap enough means. And, you know, who knows, maybe that's going to be something like the Tom's model where it's buy one and they give one away.
They give one away. I spent time in West Africa, and this is a game changer. If you can get good, clean, consistent light to allow students to study at night, to be able to do things, it's going to change the way Africa works.
Absolutely, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this kind of technology. Someone had been playing with a soccer ball that would generate some some energy and store it so that people could have that for lighting their homes at night. That is the biggest problem in a lot of the developing world, is getting good, clean, safe power into the homes.
Right.
So that's going to do it for this randomized episode of GeoGearHeads. Check out the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Uffenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.